I know they keep on saying Optimus will be able to play the piano, but really won't be able to play the piano we can. I mean, it's like you can just go anywhere and bang on it. You don't need to have fully dexterous anyway. So it won't quite be a concert pianist because it will not have that fine motor skill because they don't have enough in there.
Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Guess who I have with me again? It's Dr. Scott Walter. I am very happy to have him here. We are going to talk about hands again, specifically robotic hands. So first of all, welcome back. It's good to see you on the channel again.
Same here, John. Good to be back. And remember, this was actually a listener request.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. The first thing I need to do, in fact, actually, let me pop this up. A big thank you to Michael Brojak, who actually suggested this. And as you can see, my response was, your voice is our command. So yeah, we're going to look at the Wuji hand by Chinese company Pan Motor. And I have the actual video here. So let me switch that back out again here real quick. And there we go. All right, cool. And it didn't put the sound in. All right, so I'm going to go back and we're going to start playing this. This is, it's a few minutes long. It's like, yeah, basically 3 minutes long. So Scott, I know you have slides and we'll talk about them, but we can start playing this and then we can talk about it. There is music underneath it, but there's no actual text. All the text is printed out. So you're not missing anything, not hearing the sound except for a YouTube copyright strike. So here we go. All right. So,
okay, well, this is one of many hands that have been, shown the past few weeks out of China. And so we see there's a lot going on there. This hand is a little bit different than some of the others because the first question I'm going to ask you, John, is how do you think it's actuated? Is it tendon driven? Is it mechanical? How is it?
If those are actual actuators in there, they are tiny, tiny, tiny things. But I don't see any tendons. I don't see any ability to, I just assumed it was actuators, but I never really looked at it that closely, but they are really small if they're actuators.
Yeah, and the question is how they're actually doing it. They're not the first one to attempt this strategy with microdrives, but let's say it's a little bit different. And there are non-tendon hands that are mechanical linkages, but the actuators are actually in the palm. And this one we're going to see is a little bit different because normally we only see the glove and we don't see what's underneath. And so they took the gloves off in this case. And
yeah, we were talking about that. We were talking about that before we started recording. I was like, geez, they kind of gave away the whole deal here.
Yeah, they gave away a lot, probably because they don't think anyone can really copy them because it's all in the actuators and they're able to make very small, high torque density actuators, which is really the key. So we see a certain amount of pretty good dexterity, ability to do quite a lot of things here. We see it's a pretty small hand. There's nothing behind it. There's no forearm or anything else. And the question is like, how are they doing this trick? How are they actually able to get the activation?
Now, as a note, this is all teleoperated, so they don't have a brain for this at this point, but that's not really the point. That is not the
correct. Yeah. All we care about is mechanically, is it able to function like a human hand? And there's every indication that it probably can. It has reasonable grip strength. You might still be able to get greater grip strength with a tendon-based hand or something like that, but it's able to lift up a load of 20 kilograms, which is pretty good. And we're going to see that coming up here pretty soon where they actually show the grip strength. So it is pretty powerful for a hand of that size. That's amazing. That's a 2-finger grip. And you notice how it's not moving around when you rotated it.
Yeah.
It locked
and it's
it
also,
in really
it's also the torque is changing when they're doing that. So, the 20 kilos is very impressive, but the fact that it's able to rotate and the robustness test, do not imitate. I like that.
Yes. And the other thing is that if this punches you, it's going to hurt. It's not going to break.
Yeah, that is true. Cause it's all metal under there. The glove is a little compliant, but nothing else.
And when it's fisted up like that, it almost looks like a human hand, doesn't it? So they get something right about that a lot of the other robot hands, when they fist up like that, it looks mechanical in a way. And extremely good precision here. And I'm not surprised because for all intents and purposes, those fingers are tiny robots. Because they're not tendon driven. They're using kind of the same actuation strategy as a robot arm. Therefore, you should have really good repeatability and accuracy. Okay, so we can see a little bit of it moving around and some of the different gestures that are there. So got questions? Because I got answers.
There are so many questions. I mean, the first thing is it's just, again, there's no indication that they're doing any of the neural aspect of this, but that honestly, if you're dealing with actuators, should be relatively straightforward nowadays. People have the understanding of how to translate direct. I mean, that's just actually old school stuff. That's stuff that, you've been working on for 30 or 40 years. But obviously the neural networks make it better and able to do more stuff at once. But that, as opposed to things like tendons and stuff that have a lot of compliance, this should be substantially easier to control. So,
absolutely. And that's something they point out in there as well. And like I say, I have a slide for that. So I did a lot of screen captures, so we can kind of go through the interesting points.
Yeah. Can I ask one question before we even get to that? Like, why do you think that the palm itself, is that just where everything is sort of housed? I mean, it looks like just a piece of plastic there for the palm.
Well, there's some stuff housed in there, but actually there's probably some excess room in the palm. The palm's not very big. And the palm is actually pretty flat. Well, you don't want like a perfectly flat palm. Ideally, you want to have it to be able to couple. You want your palm to be able to go flat when it needs to be for carrying some things and be able to scrunch up. And since no one is putting it in there, they do make sure they have like a little depression. So you'll be able to grab certain things like balls a little bit better. There is probably some intent in the shape there, but many others, their palms are very flat because it's so full of stuff. They can't really change the shape in any way. And we're going to kind of get into that.
Do you watch Asianometry at all? It's a really good channel. And he just did one on the robot rice makers, the rise of the robot rice. Apparently it takes a sushi chef 3 to 4 years to learn how to make a proper rice ball. So I'm thinking like we need to task these hands with making a proper sushi rice ball. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It takes a lot of practice to make those things. So yeah. So the cupping in the hand was part of one of the things they talked about, was that, you have to have your hand just cupped right. So yeah, I mean, so here we have a perfect indication of how a dexterous, a hand that is shaped more like a human biological hand has many benefits over a big, thick, kind of, chunky thing.
Yes, absolutely. So that's what they're trying to do. And I think I'm sharing already. So let's see.
Scott, yes, add to stage. Hold on. Before presenting, remove other media. Oh, sorry. Got to do this. Then I got to do this. And there we go. Now we are.
All righty. So get in there. So we're going to be talking about the Wuji hand. But over the past couple of weeks, there are a couple other hands that have come out. One from Korea, which is this one, which is Alex, which is also pretty interesting. But it's more than just a hand. It's also a whole forearm and the whole robot and everything else. And it's mostly tendon based, but I think it's a hybrid. I think there's a couple of motions that they might actually be using a direct linkage, like in the abduction, because tendon based abduction is a little bit trickier to get control of. So again, tendon based. And then there was another hand that also came out last week that got a lot of interest, and this is from Dexterity Robotics. It's the Apex hand. And again, this is a tendon-based hand that's in there. It won't go into a whole lot of detail, but just let you know that there's been a lot of requests for these, and I've done some breakdowns on another channel about this. So today, let's just go ahead and start talking about the Wuji hand.
And just real quick, the interesting part about all this is it looks like, well, there still isn't consensus on what the right hand is.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the beginnings of consensus. People, they've been all over the place, and it looks like they're starting to kind of.
Yes. So there's kind of two camps. There's the all mechanical linkage, which was what Figure and I believe Iron from Xpeng, and I think there are a couple other hands out there that are also that. Obviously, a lot of tendon-based hands, and now some that are looking kind of at a hybrid. And I think there were 1 or 2 attempts of direct drives, of trying to get micro drives in there, but they were kind of weak and not working. And we're going to see why this one is a slightly different approach that works out pretty well and probably could be promising. It may actually be the future of hands. We'll see. So it comes from a company that's was founded in 2019, actually called Pan Motors. And it looks like they set up another division called Wuji Tech, and they specialize in making really small, high torque density motors, which makes sense. And so they're going ahead and doing that. So that's the background. If you want to find out more information from them, you got to look up Pan Motors. I think if you Google Wuji Tech, you'll end up finding this link. Anyways, this is this is the actual video, which we've already seen. And, some of the clips in there, talk about it being lightweight. So it is pretty small, super dexterous. The main thing is no coupled joints. That's the advantage of not having tendons, is none of the joints are coupled and each joint is fully actuated. Now, what we don't know is like, okay, how many degrees of freedom? And at some point they're going to reveal how many degrees of freedom do you think it has?
It's got to be most of them, because it's able to do things like adduction and abduction. So I mean, we're maybe 20.
20, yeah. It's 20.
That's what it said, actually.
The apex hand we showed before is actually 21 degrees of freedom. I think the Alex hand was 20. So they're all heading for like 20 and 21. And 21 usually means you have a little bit more movement in your thumb, which is what the apex hand did. It actually has like a roll about the thumb, which is rather interesting when you look at that video. This one does not, but they're trying to solve that another way. Okay, so 20 fully actuated rotary joints. And pretty good grip strength. So again, if you don't know what newtons are, divide by 10, that gives you kilograms. 1.5 kilograms of tip force is basically, that's what it could lift. 1.5 on one fingertip. However, the static grip load is 20 kilograms, which in newtons would be what, 200 newtons, something like that, just to give you an idea.
Yeah.
Okay, now they're trying to make it true to human anatomy. Yeah. I actually think it's truer to human anatomy. It's not quite perfect there. And one of the things you can see is like all the finger links are the same. So they really need to be a little bit different for that. You do see that they do have an arch there, which everyone tries to do to get the tips to be slightly different. But you'll see that the index finger is the longest tip, and most people's fingers. I mean, there are going to be some that are. There's always going to be a little bit different, but most people, the middle finger is the one that's kind of the tallest, I guess you could say. Now. So if we actually look at this, we can see that, it's and the index finger is actually longer. So it looks shorter. It's just that it's off the side. If they were actually straight, you'd see it's different. Because if you look at where the abduction is occurring here, it's higher. And it really shouldn't be, because if you look at an actual human hand and look at how the bone structure is set up, the middle finger, that knuckle is usually the highest, and the index finger is down a little bit lower. So that would be the correct one. And so again, if you compare the two next to that on top of one another, you get you get to see, it's not quite the right length, but close, but close.
So why do you think no? Because clearly they're not stupid. They realize that human hands are shaped like they are. So what was the decision?
I think it's because these are made out of Lego bricks.
Right.
That only come.
So it's just like they're just like they're this length, and that's what you get. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's and they probably could. And I think they're going to discover that they're going to want to do that, just like everyone else. There's going to be a lot of reasons. Okay. So this is kind of what it looks like inside the glove before the glove covered everything up. So I just caught that one frame so you can sort of see the two, and the glove is got a certain amount of meat on it, I guess. So it's either a well-insulated glove, or they put some additional filling in there. Because if we kind of just go back, we can sort of see that right up at the fingertips, you notice it's kind of like it's not rounded there. It's almost like they intentionally are leaving room for some softer cushioning to go in there for the tips. And the other thing we'll notice back there is you can actually see the fingernails that they've built in fingernails in the different places, and that will become obvious when we see some of the glove positions here. Okay, so obviously very soft. It looks like a much fuller hand. Actually, it's amazing if you look at your hand and say, wow, imagine trying to put motors there. But remember, the motors are not going out to that time. They're going actually thinner than that. It's down to bone level. So those are really compact. And I kind of forget that, because I'm looking at the screen and I'm just looking like a really big hand, but I got to realize, wait a minute, I have to scale it down to the actual size. So the motors are actually smaller than what you're probably seeing on the screen.
Again, and if you go back to that one again, if you look at it, you can see how different it is from a human hand, because all the fingers are. It's basically like a straight line across the top.
And I'd like to know where they were able to find a glove with all the fingers the same length.
Well, they may have made it. I mean,
they probably did. It's probably custom made. I think you can get things like that made in China. It's probably not that hard.
They just went next door, is what they did.
Next door, and they were able to find a guy to do it. Yes. And so here's what the Tesla hand looks like, just kind of for comparison, and also for the nomenclature, because we'll be talking about pip and dip and all these other things, just so everyone can go through this, get an idea of, when we talk about phalanges, they're basically little sections of bones that make up your digits, and the distal tip, and then the middle phalange is called the middle phalange, and the very first one is called the proximal. We'll use that terminology just so everyone can understand, and also for comparison purposes. So the first thing, John, where is the dip joint and where is the pip joint?
Gosh, I think the middle one's the dip joint and the top one's the pip joint, but I could be.
No, the dip is means distal interphalangeal
okay. Well, there we
joint.
go. Yeah.
So that would be the one at the top, but it's basically it's along here. So if it wasn't obvious, they're all rotating about those little black screws, and those are tiny compared to what they look like on your screen. Trust me. So and you can see sort of where the rotation is.
Just think about even skinnier. It's like if you took the meat off of your hand.
Yeah, they're not that big.
And put a motor in there. It's crazy.
Yeah. And so you get the pip joints. Now, if you were to actuate that, I mean, how would you get that to move if you know there's motors there?
Well, I mean, you've got to have a lever arm to move something around. So you would probably you would anchor the motor on the lower phalange and then rotate the top part around it. I mean,
the top one, and that's going to be a bit tricky. I mean, ideally, that axis along there, that green axis, is like, just stick a motor in there, and the blue one just do the same thing. But that means those motors would be really teeny tiny inside of the screw.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's very difficult to do. But if you were building a robot arm, that's how you would build a robot arm, and that's how a lot of the humanoids. Remember, their joints, like the elbow, the shoulder, hip, all those, they basically have an actuator right there, right at the knee to be able to go. So the actuator is the hinge. In this case, you can't do it because that is really, really getting them small. So that would be pretty tricky to do something like that. Now, again, we're going to come down here to what is called the MCP joint. And that's the metacarpal phalangeal joint. And you can see also kind of two axes there. And I want you to sort of identify which is which one do you think is the abduction and which one do you think is the flexion? Well,
the top one with the silver little dots facing us are the adduction.
Yes.
And then the lower ones. But the interesting part is that it looks like the anchor is on the top part and it rotates about because you have a nice empty tube in the finger there. So you can, So the actual flexion
is the lower one here, and the abduction comes above it. And this is unusual because usually all three flexions of the pip joints and the dip joints in down there are all in the same order, and that the abduction is usually the first one off of the palm. So you could see one's above the other, and you also notice they don't quite intersect. Ideally, you'd like them to intersect, but that's just it's kind of designing everything, and a lot of times you have no choice but to have a little bit of offset of your axis because the mechanics of trying to build something like this. Now, if we compare it with Tesla, you see right down here in the palm, the abduction comes first.
Right.
And then you see, then we have the flexion, the MCP flexion, followed by then the proximal and the distal up there. Right. So they, those three in a row. So that's the difference here, is that they've changed the order. And we're going to understand in a minute why they did that. There's a couple reasons. Okay. But
again, it's clever. If you go back to that, it's very clever because you've got effectively inside the fingers, there's a hollow area where there's nothing going on because it's just aluminum and you carve. So having the joint like anchor backwards to the way we would think it would work makes a lot of sense in this case.
It's going to be a little bit different because the question is how they actually actuate this flexure. And so when we look at the other joints, when you're going to come down here, it's going to be a head scratcher and say, wait a minute, this is being done a little bit different. I'm not quite sure. The other thing is, what do you think this brassy stuff is?
I just assumed it was copper or brass or something, but
it's actually cabling. It's flat cabling. So it's all going around, and we're going to see it everywhere. So maybe for that reason, or it's just like the color that comes in. Designed to be able to go around these joints without wearing out. So, and you're going to see it in other places that you can kind of see what looks like the cabling color going around, and that's also going to give us some hints. Okay, so if we look at this,
so it actually, I mean, it literally could be like one of the old Apollo buses or something. It's just a flexible slab of conductive material.
That's it.
So it's nothing real fancy about it. So okay,
all right. So we have again our distal phalange, middle and proximal phalanges. That's where they are, and what they are made up of, we're going to discover. So we look at the distal. So these are all the distal ones, and there's no motors whatsoever on the fingers. The thumb is different. When we get to the thumb, we're going to see, wait a minute, it looks like the distal phalange is actually made up of a motor section. So they actually, the strategy of this is a bit reverse of what's going on here. So the very last tip, there is nothing in there. And it's the one below it that's actually carrying it. And we're going to have to figure out how that's done. So what ends up happening is that you have what's kind of a yoke kind of interface that goes into a T. And in there is some kind of IP. This is, your interphalangeal reducer. Okay.
Right.
So we've got a bunch of those there. And you see there's 3 of them. And the one down the bottom is actually rotated a little bit differently. So there's some magic going on in the IP reducer that we're going to talk about in just a second. And then here is probably where the motor is and maybe the motor controller. There may even be 2 kind of reducers. It could be like a small planetary to spin everything down to slow it down. And then this IP reducer is actually something that's needed to make the direction of rotation change. So the motor is rotating along the finger axis. However, the joint is 90 degrees to it. So you need to figure out, wait a minute, how do I take the rotation this direction? And there are ways of doing it, which we're going to get into. So we can see the different sections that make this thing up. And then you have, again, what is kind of this IP joint, which doesn't have a reducer in it. Maybe it has maybe it has some control logic or something else built into it, or maybe it's completely inert, but that's sort of the section they need to be able to connect to the one underneath it. So what we're seeing is that everything above is carried by something below. Yeah. At least down to here. And then it kind of reverses. This thing here kind of carries itself, but we're going to see there's an axis direction change. So in the proximal, there are actually 2 motors. One on the top and one on the bottom, which is that's your longer bone anyway. And then you have your smaller bone, which is made up of a smaller section. And finally, the distal, there's nothing. And that's how they're able to make sure that the links are kind of correct. Right.
But there's also the abduction adduction one too, as well.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be getting down to there. So what ends up happening is that these 2 up here do the IP flexion. And then right down here at the bottom, this one here doesn't do the flexion. That one does the abduction, because you'll see this axis is rotated 90 degrees to what's there. And then the last section that's on here is what I just call like a motor interconnect. And I'm not sure why, it's as thick as it is. Maybe it's just to be able to connect it, maybe to get the length right. Maybe there's some stuff in there that's still kind of important that I'm not aware of, because, there may be some stuff in this IP joint up here that I'm not aware of that they need to get down in there. So there's some sort of thing that connects the 2 sections together to create that entire phalange.
Well, I could even see some just control logic, some, you need some circuits and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. So this, the circuits could be one of these rings, or maybe it is, usually it's at the bottom. So if you think about making a hamburger, the lower bun is your control board, then the meat is your motor, and then the bun on top usually is your reducer.
Yeah.
So it's possible there's some stuff in there. Now we're going to see that there is also like a pretty neat brochure that they also have when you go to their website that wasn't in the video. And in there are some clues to how things work that we're going to see. And I'm going to look at 2 of the hands, and one of them we're going to kind of come back to. So this image up here, and we also get like limits of travel and everything else, which are kind of nice. So looking at that image tells us a little bit of what's going on in the finger. And the first thing I want you to see is that if you draw a center line through the finger, you'll see that actually where the rotation is happening is off center. It's definitely not there.
Well, but again, that makes sense because you need some way to generate torque. So that's probably
yeah. And you need some way to be. Now that means there's 2 possible ways. There may be others, but 2 that I'm aware of that allows you to be able to take rotation in one direction and turn it 90 degrees in the other. And one is a worm gear drive, and the other is just using a bevel gear. And they both work a little bit differently. And that in the case of the worm gear, you'll see the center line is offset from the output shaft. Whereas with the bevel gear, both of them line up. However, the bevel gear is offset from it. So even though the axes of rotation intersect, they are kind of off. And this kind of gives us a clue of what they might be doing, mainly because if you look at the yoke sections in here and draw a center line through it, you'll see how symmetric they are. Usually when you have an offset bevel, one side will be thicker than the other, and one will be, you kind of shift everything over. But because I just don't think they have the room to do it. And you'll see like a lot of robot wrists that are asymmetric that way, and you can tell, okay, it's because all the mechanics that they needed built in one side, and the other one is just to make sure the thing kind of stays in place. So I suspect they're not doing that. If we then look at this, then you can imagine, well, maybe you can come up with a worm gear and then literally reduce it down to kind of fit in there. That means it's pretty tiny. It could be the output is actually a little bit smaller, that gear. And if that's smaller, then the worm gear gets a little bit bigger. But that's what I'm imagining is sort of how they're doing something there.
But I mean, worm gears, it always seems like they're relatively slow compared to those, sort of direct connect gears, or the bevel gears. So, and the fingers seem to move pretty quickly though. So do you just think
they move pretty quickly, but the motors are probably moving even quicker. So this might be all the reduction they're doing.
Wow.
Or maybe like I say, there might be a section in there that does a little bit of reduction and then this. Yeah. But if that's what you're getting your gear ratio out of, it is quick. Wow. It is quick.
Yeah. Well, remember, and I also think about
motors spin pretty fast.
The backlash and things like that over and over again, doing things like this means that the motor's spinning, stopping. I mean, that seems like you're going to generate a ton of backlash through there.
Yeah, there could be some backlash or wear over time, but according to some of the stuff I looked at, these hands have gone through a lot of cycles, so it seems like they are reasonably robust. But we won't know until they actually go out and they're put into real action.
Worm gear for longevity over a bevel gear is that a bevel gear, you're never touching more than just a few of the teeth of the whole thing. Yeah. So there's a lot of stress on a relatively small amount of area. Whereas the worm gear, if you build it right, has a pretty significant surface contact with the rotational gear.
Yes. So, absolutely. Yeah. So that's a guess. They could be doing something else, but trying to get some idea.
I mean, the fact that it's offset slightly does indicate
is a hint.
And you can bury the worm gear a little bit inside the larger part of the finger too. So
so that you can possibly seat it on the other side to make sure that the axle doesn't deflect when there's load on it. So coming back here to the abduction and getting an idea of what's going on, I want you to notice if we look at the finger extended out, that this is the pip joint up there, the blue axis, and you can see the yellow axis, which is the abduction. They're clearly perpendicular to each other. They're not in the same direction. Yeah. So that means this output motor has been kind of rotated, and the reducer coming out of there is like a little bit different than the others. It's similar, but a little bit different, just because the geometry is different and this little linkage that it kind of comes on in there. So that points out in this direction, which means that's rotated, and we can kind of tell it's rotated because if you look at the sides of these motors, we can see these two motors are actually aligned the same direction. The other one is probably rotated 90 degrees. So this cable that's exposed here is exposed on the backside and we can't see it. Okay. Yeah. So that is how they are doing the abduction, is they're actually using the motor above it to do it. However, we're not quite sure how they're doing the flexion because we don't see the same kind of action going on up there. So we're going to zoom in and take a look at what's going on a little bit closer here. And I definitely, there's probably some sort of motor or actuator down in here, but the question is, how does it make that thing rotate? And the key is these two screws that you see right there. They are they're points of rotation that I guessed as a result of this, they made a 4-bar parallelogram out of this. So you've got a linkage in here. You've got ensconced in there this motor with the output red here causing that lever arm to move, and then a connecting rod there to this one, and it moves up. And this whole black mechanism is here. I mean, ignore the fact that you've got this cable going around there, which kind of confuses you. This is like one solid piece that comes around. So that little blue thing I have actually kind of goes up there to connect everything together. So that mechanism is what's moving around and rocking back and forth.
That provides the range? That provides a complete 90-degree bend?
Yeah, actually 100 up to 135 degrees. We can sort of see from this image. So it wasn't clear in the video when I took the frames, and then I went to the website, looked at the brochure, and I say, wait a minute, what's going on back here? So if you look at the knuckles, you'll see there's some funny business going on here. and if you look at this, these are extended out, and this is kind of in a retracted position. If you look really close, you can see something. But that other image that I showed you earlier actually is the key right there. So you can see that is the mechanism right there that they're using. And if we zoom in, we can sort of see where the pivot points are. Now, this one we can't see because it's buried in there, but we can clearly see there's a point of rotation here and there. That's your output rotation. And then you can kind of overlay where the linkages are going to be, and you definitely get a parallelogram, which means every degree of rotation for this red axis, you get one out there. So it's a nice linear relationship. It's almost as if it was directly on there. So that's how they're able to do it, because they needed that offset, because there's probably no other way they could get it in there, for the size reasons and everything else. Now, and the other thing we can see is that it's a very thin profile, even in the palm, but the palm is thicker here. Right. And why do you think the palm would be thicker than the fingers?
Well, I mean, if you're going to be trying to hold 20 kilos, that's the place that's got to have the larger actuators.
You're kind of getting to it. So how good you're Chinese, because if we zoom in here, we can read this thing here, and which is part of the specs. And pretty much what this is saying is that the output torque at the IP joints and the MCP joint. So that means up at your finger knuckles, and then the base knuckle down here. You'll see that there's two different Newton meters there. So 0.3 and 1. Yeah, so that means
you get a 3x, like
3x down there, which means that motor that's in the palm is 3 times more powerful than the ones up here. This is why the flexion comes first and the abduction comes second. Because imagine they turned it around. We had it down there, and now we're using that. Yeah. Well, abduction, you don't need that much strength.
Right.
But for gripping, you do. Because it's mainly this knuckle. That's the part. Your proximal phalange is the one that's carrying the load, and the other two are just making sure the load doesn't shift. So you need to have all the strength there, and that's where they're getting their grip strength from, and that's why they turned it around. And I'm pretty sure the motor that's in there is bigger, and because it's bigger, everything had to be made a little bit thicker, and that also explains a couple other interesting things that we've kind of noticed here, and that the index finger is up too high. And it seems like, why didn't they bring the index finger down?
Right.
The reason they didn't bring it down is because they needed all that room for the motor.
Yeah. Well, it's also, you got the thumb in the way.
Because the CMC joint of the thumb was in the way.
Exactly.
If they made the thumb go down a little bit lower, perhaps, but it seems like what ended up happening is that, they had to make it a little bit higher rather than a little bit lower. And so maybe there's some repackaging and some rethinking they could do there, but I'm pretty sure that's why it's too tall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And of course you've just got, there's only so much miniaturization that may literally be as small as each of those segments can be to fit all the stuff they have to fit in
I'm
there.
sure they can still make them a little bit smaller, but each one of them then starts to get a bit special. So they will probably do something to maybe make a couple of these section sizes a little bit different so you can get that. But again, it's Lego bricks going together, so it's really hard in this first version for them to make each finger a slightly different length. Yeah. Okay. Now we can start to talk a little bit about the thumb. And the thing to notice is that if we look at the normal finger, we have the inert distal joint, which has a yoke kind of interface with a T interface that comes underneath here from the motor that's going in there. But if we look at the thumb, we'll see that's reversed. And that's because there's a motor up here. So they're basically going the opposite. In this case, every phalange carries itself, not the one after it.
Right.
And so here it is where the thumb is kind of in a flex position. And the main thing is I want to kind of look in and notice a couple of things. And that is the thumb is mounted in a rather interesting orientation.
Oh, yeah.
Which will become a bit more obvious as we go along. But, the first thing to notice, hey, guess what? They really have a thumbnail on there.
Yeah.
You can clearly see it there. We can see it on the other fingers. And actually, sometimes when you look at the gloves, you can sort of see that profile there. So they have something to make the gripping a little bit easier by having that thumb mechanism built in there. So again, if we look at the thumb from this view, down here at the CMC joint, we can clearly see that the first CMC axis is just off at an odd direction. It's not in the palm. It's not perfectly vertical. It's like, okay, it's a bit weird. And if we start looking at these things, we can begin to see that things do get interesting. So you have your normal flexion up here, which is what we expect. And we can see, again, it almost is a giveaway because now we can see that cable coming on down here.
Yeah.
We can see it's rotated 90 degrees. And this here is the CMC2 rotation.
Yeah.
And then it's not clear if this is perpendicular to the blue. I actually think it's a little bit off. So your CMC joint down here in your thumb actually has 3 degrees of freedom. And you think of it from the standpoint of evolution, it's like the fingers used to all be the same, and the thumb kind of migrated on down here.
Right.
And all your joints, in some ways, you could almost say they're all a spherical joint, but because of ligaments and everything, they hold them in place. So for all intents and purposes, we have a hinge joint here, even if it's not built exactly like a hinge, because our bodies make sure that's the only thing you can do, and you can't twist it anyway. The same with the MCP joint. There's really only 2 degrees of freedom there. Yeah, there might be like a little bit of twisting on there, but too much, and you're going to start snapping ligaments. So it's really that there. However, down here, nature said we need a bit more mobility, and that spherical axis down there is able to move around. Now the thumb has something like 8 or 9, depends upon, some people are lucky and they get the 9th one.
Oh, the double joint.
8 or 9 tendons. Yes.
Yeah.
Going through it. And because of it, it has a lot more mobility than we have. But I wouldn't say the mobility is like your classical spherical joint. Part of it is that if you look at the shoulder joint that all the humanoids are building, all the axes are 90 degrees to each other so they can move every way they want. The actuation and going in the human body is a little bit different. The directions are going on there. So not all the actuation directions are in the same direction or say are perpendicular. And as a result, you get what they kind of call this circumduction movement, that you move a couple and your fingertip kind of processes and moves around in a funny manner. Yeah. So it looks like we have kind of 3 degrees of freedom there. It's hard to get full control. It might be closer to 2.5 degrees of freedom.
Right.
So how do you emulate that? Well, you kind of put your joints off in like weird orientation. Everyone else is building them. If you look at the apex and the other hands, they were like lined up perfectly because that's what engineers want. We want things perpendicular and parallel and everything else. Yeah. They said, let's kind of put them in there and kind of an oddball thing and get something that maybe actually emulates the kind of circumduction motion that you would typically get from a CMC joint.
And in order to do things like this, where you're, you have to be able to, it works better if it's off, if at a weird angle.
You're getting to, So this is opposition. So opposition is very, very important. And that's something that they show off. And a lot of the other videos have been showing off recently. And we're going to try to take credit because we've been talking a lot about the Compunji score. I mean, obviously, if they've been talking to hand surgeons, they all know about it. But it's rather interesting. It's starting to show up in the videos because that is like one of the first tests of mobility of looking at the opposition of the thumb, where you go through and see how you can touch different parts of your digits. That they start showing off. So again, that thumb is looking kind of like this, and I think there's some slides here. Okay, so here's an example of them going for the Compunji score. So when you looked at that, you will notice they were touching everywhere really rapidly, and they were actually going for points that you don't usually get for Compunji. You don't go down the middle fingers; you just go up along tips, and then you come on back down. Now these are close, but because they can't quite rotate the thumb. As a lack of that, this is again, that's okay, that's nice, but usually you don't score it. But if you look at that one there, you can say, oh, great, look, you've got the opposition. I think what they call the ulnar opposition, being able to go all the way over there. But look at how it is forming it and look how I am forming it. You see, I'm able to make a nice O. Yeah. And everyone that's able, we're able to kind of make a nice, but you see how the tip is kind of coming in perpendicular? Yeah. That's not quite right. So you wouldn't actually score that, and you need that thumb to be able to come down a little bit more to be able to get that. And the other thing is that we also the pinky kind of has an extra degree of freedom down there. The metacarpal starts to come over a little bit to allow that. And so without the movement of the fifth metacarpal, you can't really get that very easily. That's why Tesla has probably added that in there, is because they want to make it a lot easier getting that around. So that's just, since you brought it up, it was very, and again, these are the touch points for the Compunji score. And he was a C programmer because he started at 0.
I would most definitely not get good grades on all of that stuff. My hands are just not flexible at all. So.
Yeah. So again, yeah, you kind of see it attempting to go through here, and we can see that fingernail kind of exposed. I mean, it's a little bit covered in fabric. I imagine they're thinking that the final version of the gloves will expose these a bit better.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like a duckbill platypus right there.
Plastic
like
on top of it. Yeah.
Looks like a duckbill platypus. Yeah, I mean, again, it's early days. They can clearly do the aesthetic,
and they'll probably put all the sensors, on there. So there's no reason to build it actually into the bony structure, but then and that way you don't have to worry about the cable routing or anything like that for those. So pretty good range of abduction, plus or minus 30 degrees, which is probably more than most human hands. And
really cool that it can do them all in the same direction too.
Now, the big thing here is that they have 20 fully actuated rotary joints, and that means they can move them individually. We have a really hard time of doing that. And in order to be able to have that kind of control, you need a lot of tendons. And we have a lot of tendons for it. So we have like 3 flexures that allow us to have good grip strength, 1 extensor that allows it to come back. So basically the flexures allow it to go down. The extensor allows it to come back, but we're weaker in that direction. Right. And most of those are actually down here in the forearm. Yeah. So that's where the strength is. Now, Elon has said that, most of your muscles are down here, and that's not correct. You have the same number of muscles in the palm of your hand as you do in your forearm. It's just that the ones down here are stronger. The ones up here are called the intrinsics, and they are extremely important to you being able to have fine motor control. So if you only have 2 of them in there, you're using antagonism between the 2 to try to get your fingers to close right. So one of the things your fingers has to do, and I will stop this for a second here on the sharing. One of the things your fingers need to do.
Let me make this bigger. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that when you close your fingers, if you had like just 1 tendon and you only had torsion springs that will allow your fingers to open back up, as you pull on that tendon, you're going to get a clawing motion down like that. And that's how your fingers are going to close. Unless there's something resisting that when you're coming down that would keep it in there. For the most part, you're going to claw, and that's a claw grip, and you don't want that. That means when you go to grab something like a bottle and then you start clawing, you're going to miss it. So what you want to do is you want to have a straight finger close and then be able to do that. Yeah. And a lot of the mechanical hands that are out there that are not using tendons are designed that way, that they start closing like this, and then it will engage and go ahead and be able to do that. Right. If you have 2 tendons, the flexure and the extension, you can start to use antagonism that will allow you to do that. So as it's trying to curl up like this, I can then pull on the extensor and it will attempt to pull it back out. Of course, the flexure wants to come up, but then I pull a little bit hard. So you have a little bit, but you don't have that real fine super control that's in there. Now our extensors are able to do a lot of things. So, you can do a little bit of like this, of moving your fingers up and down. But when you go to plunk the piano, when you go to push down on a key like that, that is your intrinsics, which means I know they keep on saying Optimus will be able to play the piano, but really you won't be able to play the piano we can. I mean, it's like, you can just go anywhere and bang on it. You don't need to have fully dexterous feet. Anyway, so it won't quite be a concert pianist because it will not have that fine motor skill because they don't have enough in there. So what we're seeing here is that because they have full control of every single joint, they can come up with gestures that we would have a hard time doing. Yeah, and they don't need all that. So that's a rather interesting thing. So
you could claim that this hand likely will be able to play the piano quite well.
I think it could. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just going to be a matter, and I need to go back here and find. Let's see. Oh yeah, here we're sharing right there. We can kind of get back. So that full actuation really allows them to do any. As you can see, they can do straight finger. And they had the curl when it was straight up there. So they're showing off. They're doing things like, oh, you tendon guys. Let's see if you can do this. It's like, wait a minute. Are you sharing my screen? I'm seeing mine.
Whoops. I'm sorry. I'm sharing the wrong one. I thought I was sharing yours. There we go.
There we go.
I was like, why is it playing the whole movie?
Yeah. Anyway, so there we go. As you see, I mean, that's tricky to be able to just move like your distal up. I can't move. It's like, you try doing both of them go down. I can't move one at a time there. That's very difficult.
Kinda.
It's hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
Actually,
maybe
there
in my
was
youth.
Lane was watching YouTube video the other day, and it was like you have your pinky and your thumb out, and your thumb and your pinky, and then you have to switch. I don't know why. Anyway, you have to switch, and it's like crazy how difficult it is.
So that gesture there somehow made fireworks.
I know. I guess it was like,
whatever that was. Okay, it only works on your side, doesn't it?
And now it didn't work at all. I don't know why. So apparently, I was celebrating.
Okay.
Anyway.
So, yep. Now this, I think, is very important. And when I saw it, I just nodded in agreement that, because it's the simple kinematics, minimal sim to real gap. This will be so easy for RL teaching, no doubt about it.
Yeah, exactly.
They can get any posture they want. Now, the range of motion they have in their fingers is actually greater than us. So if you look at your pip and dip joints, you can only go about 90. Your pip, you can go like maybe 100 degrees, something like that, and your dip 80 or 85. That's about the limit. And then also in your main joint, only down just 90, maybe a little bit. They can go 130 in all these, so they can extend beyond and really come up with a gesture that we can't, which is pretty.
That also means that doing things, because one of the problems with doing teleoperation is when the human has more degrees of freedom than the whatever it is that they're working with, they have to modify the way they move in order to work with this. But this clearly has more degrees of freedom than a human, or not more degrees, but more range of motion.
More range of motion.
So in order to do that, then you're actually talking about, so that's actually cool, because that means since it has more range of motion, it can easily copy any human motion.
Yes. So it will not be able to. So it's kind of a superset of all our motions. We won't be able to access it except maybe through RL learning or something like that, where you teach it something. But okay. And the other thing is brushless motors, 20x. So no surprise there. Again, showing kind of different motions that they have here. Thumb out. Looks like they have the hitchhiker's thumb. And now they're doing a little bit of teleoperation here, and this is where I want to look at some of the strength they have and also some of the grips. We're going to kind of come back to that range of motion in a second.
I think this is again the reason why the abduction is above the rotation, because that allows you to do things like having rotational torque stability, because otherwise
now, this is a 2-finger grip hold, and
I know that's really impressive.
I got it froze. Unfortunately it's blurry, but that's only a 5 kilogram weight at that time. But they're doing something that when they're coming in, even though the other fingers aren't there, the first 2 fingers are gripping it hard enough, and they're forcing that mass back against the palm. So they're keeping it pretty rigid, because when they moved around, I was expecting to see it kind of flop back and forth, because I've seen others.
It's rock solid. Yeah.
Right. Usually you want to have your pinky to lock it in. That's why your pinky is so important. It's the one that makes sure things do not move around. So your pinky is more important to using a hammer than your index finger, believe it or not. So that's yeah. I mean, Gustav Anderson said that if you use hammers and do stuff like that, and you had a choice of losing either your index finger or your pinky, he said, lose your index finger. Believe it or not, it's the pinky is more important.
It makes sense. It's got the most in terms of moment arm. The furthest away from where your thumb is, so it gives you the most absolutely. So that makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But still, so this is very impressive, because this is only using the first part and not the pinky to help grip it. So
it's using all 3, of course.
Yeah.
And again, you can sort of see the way it curls underneath. It's the first phalange that actually needs to have the strength. And the others are just to make sure it doesn't slide off the hand. So they need minimal strength. Again, precision, not surprised at all, because these are tiny robot fingers for the most part.
Right.
Now, we did see it doing a couple actions here. I mean, it didn't really spin the thing around. It would just kind of flop it back and forth. It's like, okay, all right. But that's kind of teleoperation. We can see the speed of what's going on here. Now, this here, if you look at it, there's an issue with you see how the fingertips are digging in the base of the palm? That's not how I would grab a pen.
Yes.
Curl a bit more. And the other thing, I guess you can stop my sharing for a second, and we'll kind of look at it, is the lengths of our phalanges basically form the Fibonacci sequence. And the reason they do is because it allows our fingers to curl. So when we are doing this, we can curl our fingers up, and there's absolutely no light coming through,
no space.
You know, if you can't do it for some reason, like if your tips were too long or something like that, or like, you know, if the middle phalange was too long, you wouldn't be able to do it. You would see light. So yeah, I guess you can get a little bit of light if I get it on the camera right. So, but they should be able to do that because it seems like they're close to being correct with the Fibonacci, and they definitely have the range of motion. They get 130 degrees. It's not like, oh, we only got 75 on those. It's like they have more than enough. And I've noticed it in a couple of the sequences, like, wow, it's digging in, it's always coming around.
Yeah.
And I think I know what the problem is. You kind of touched on this a little bit sooner, John, earlier.
Right.
Do you know when you were talking about pretty much being able to capture human data?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And you see there's right underneath there saying, you know, 1x teleoperation. So this is a teleoperated sequence they're doing right now.
Right.
And what's the problem with most teleoperated data gloves?
Well, I mean, I think the amount of precision in them is relatively
terrible.
Yeah.
You know, it's so what it may actually be that the person is trying to close down, but the data that's coming over is off.
It's just rotating.
They never get those angles right. They get an approximation of the angle.
Yeah.
So this is not an output error. This is an input error, more than likely, because I know they can go ahead and do it. And what that means is it gives you an idea of kind of the state of the art of teleoperation when it comes to hand. It's not very good.
Yeah.
It's you know, everywhere it's really hard to get it right.
To be fair, it's never had to be very good because hands have always been so primitive that if you can just get some sort of basic claw motion, that was about as much as you were going to get anyway.
Yeah.
So,
but now if you want to be able to grab this correctly, and the same thing here with, you know, the lighter example, it's not grabbing the lighter exactly the way I would. You see that the fingers are kind of dug back low in the palm. They should be a little bit higher. Again, I think that's just all teleoperation. The scissors they could have done, they could have held it correctly. It looks like no, they don't know how to do it because your finger. I had to get my scissors and I'll show you.
Yeah, you're usually supposed to use your middle finger, right? It's sort of a little bit like a pencil grip-ish.
So,
no, wait, now. Oh, wait, hold on. Yep.
So
you gotta get the Scott demo here.
Okay.
Cut with scissors.
yeah. Well, okay. So this is basically we have to thank James Dama for it because now they're all showing it. This is the third video we've seen of a hand holding scissors, but it kind of has it wrong. Now I think I'm holding it kind of. Oh, this is how they're doing it.
Yeah,
something like that,
which is very awkward. Because you kind of use the index finger as a little bit of a
you want to have it out like this.
Yeah.
And the thumb is only like that. You really want the thumb all the way in. If your hand is not feeling uncomfortable when you're using scissors, you're not using them right. That's what I thought. And a lot of it is because we're not just doing the cutting motion, we're also kind of pulling on the blades. We're pulling this way because if the blades don't come in close to each other, we don't get any cutting force or cutting action. We need to have them in there. So a lot of times that's why we have the index finger there and our thumb and doing everything else to be able to do it. I think they're just showing that, you could put a pair of scissors in there if we would learn how to use them right. And maybe it's just like, you know, this is penmanship has gone out the window, right? You know, people type now.
That's what I'm saying.
And I guess maybe they're not teaching kindergarten people to use scissors anymore because there's other ways to cut stuff. So lost art, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Maybe Chinese people hold scissors differently. You never know. I mean, it's always possible.
But that's going to be one of the real tests of, you know, being able to hold something like this as far as human dexterity. But at the same time, you know, these are. It'll be really cool when mounted with an arm to see if they can actually cut a line and stuff like that. Everyone would be impressed. I'm not sure there's really that many jobs that you need to use scissors. If you're in a manufacturing environment where a lot of things need to be cut, they're not being cut with scissors. There's like other ways to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if you're a tailor or something like that, you need to do it. And if you're a surgeon, but for the most part, the majority of jobs that people have do not require them to use a pair of scissors.
But even so, I think, you know, cutting wrapping paper, for example, to wrap a birthday present, that's a good test because it's very difficult to cut without tearing. It requires a lot of dexterity with both hands. You have to do that thing where you take the scissors and you have to they can't just kind of like randomly, you have to pull the two blades together so that they're very, very refined. So I would say that being able to wrap a present would be a very good test of robotic dexterity. And the mental aspect of it too. I mean, goodness gracious.
And just getting the tape
to plan
on there
it out,
and getting it off your finger.
I mean, it's hard. I'm frustrated as a human after decades of, wrapping presents. I'm still like, I hate this thing. So maybe that's what I want. I just want a robot to wrap presents for me, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the last one. Is everyone wondered where I was getting these numbers from? You can see here that it's 130 degrees on each of the IP joints. 60, that means that's actually abduction. 125 down there for basically the flexion.
Wow.
And you get an idea of the rotations that's there.
Those are impressive.
Interesting hand.
That's impressive. That is an impressive amount of degrees. Range of motion.
Now you see that everything about this hand it's literally in the hand. There's nothing in the forearm.
Yeah.
So I don't think Tesla is doing anything like this, because we know they're putting all the motors and everything down in the forearm. Some of it could be you still get some strength out of that. I'm wondering if they're going to go to a hybrid approach, because when I was talking about the Alex spot that was up there, they seem to do kind of a hybrid as well. I mean, I think maybe I just kind of quickly go back up to where that one was, which is right
way back there. It is.
Yeah. It's a little bit hard to see, but it looks like they actually sometimes, and I've got other slides for this, but not right in here, that the abduction movement that they have. Okay, we're not going to see the abduction here. This was a video kind of showing how they did the wrist. It's kind of like the Tesla wrist, but a little bit different. Actually, it's like the what will be the 22 DOF hand wrist is using this same type of kinematic. It's a twist on an old theme. But what's going on here with Alex is that they are using tendons for the flexion, but it looks like they may actually have a lever mechanism here going back to some motors for the abduction. And the advantage of that is that the rule I think you want to use is that if you're doing coupling, so the reason why you're doing tendons is you've got 3 IP joints that you're trying to get to move.
Right.
And they're all kind of coupled together. So you want to have one actuator that kind of allows them to all go, but to open up, you need the other actuator to go the other way. But that's okay. The fact that you're dedicating kind of 2 actuators for it, and you have the antagonism that will allow you to do a few other things like that.
Right.
The problem with doing with an abductor in some other places is that if you want to go in the positive direction, you need one actuator, and if you want to go in the negative direction, you need another one.
Right.
So that means you're kind of, wait a minute, I've got really 1 degree of freedom there, and I'm having to waste 2 actuators on it. That gets kind of expensive. The other thing is, it's really hard to hold them in place. So when you're trying to do like a pinching, the abduction can slip because it's the moment arm there is like almost nothing. You've got very little space, and you got a point of rotation in there, and you're trying to pull these horses' reins there to hold that in place, and it just doesn't want to stay there. So if you make a mechanical linkage there, now it can work the same way. And I've seen agile robots. They have a finger that's exactly like that. They have 3 actuators in there, and they have abduction, which is one, and then they have the tendon drive actually for the flexion, and they use, I think, bevel gears and stuff like that to be able to do the abduction. So Alex is kind of a hybrid, and I'm wondering if Tesla would consider that. It's like, well, wait a minute, we can get rid of literally 8 actually like a whole ring of actuators down here.
Right. Yeah, the ones that are like,
we'd have to move them up here, and the problem is that you move them up there, you get all that routing, because with 24 tendons going through there, it's like pretty busy in there. And then it's like, we want to have the routing for that. Now they're doing that too, because you can sort of see they do have tendons in here.
But I thought that Tesla was potentially going a different direction with their next generation hand anyway.
I mean, the indications are that they're still, it's a forearm problem. So Elon did say about a week ago in the All In podcast that they're struggling with it, and that all the muscles are in the forearm. So it's very clear that that's where everything is going. There's nothing in the hand. So I think it's there. It's still tendon based. I really don't know why they don't consider, hey, you could get, and that means you either get rid of a ring of actuators down there, or now, wait a minute, I don't need all those perhaps that means those can be bigger. Now I have more space. I can put bigger actuators there. And now I can get even better grip strength. So if they can find some way to do the actuation up there without them getting in the way of the tendons coming through there. And you can sort of see where the tendons have to go through the carpal tunnel that's in there.
Yeah.
And that's why that kind of actuation strategy makes sense, is it opens up a really nice avenue for you to be able to do all the cable routing.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, that circles kind of back to what we had at the beginning, which was we were talking about how there still is not the correct answer to this yet. There's still a lot of searching around. And, you know, do you think in 5 years there's going to be a solution that's going to be for 90% of the situations?
I mean,
there'll be the 5% niche, whatever situation.
And that's what you got to do is just think of your Pareto fronts. You know, just do not try to over optimize, and look at what are all the activities you have to do, and make sure the robot hand is able to do that, and don't put more degrees of freedom or more capability than you absolutely need. So on the factory floor, you do not need to be able to play the piano. There's a lot of other things but you'll still have a lot of utility, and that's what you need to do. And a lot of it comes from grip strength. So again, this abduction, which is very important for a lot of things, you know, very, very simple things. Like if you want to take the bottle cap off, you know, that's basically being done with your abduction, bringing the fingers around there. So it's important for some actions like that. So any screwing or unscrewing. And I think the Dexel Robotics one, in their video, they actually showed taking a bottle cap off. Which everyone was like really impressed. Again, I tell everyone, it's like, it's not what you see, it's what you don't see. And if you'll notice, I already had this bottle cap open, and usually you can tell because there's already a crack there. So you look at the video, you'll see that the seal was already broken. And you also see that there already was like a lot of head in there in the Coke bottle. So it's like someone had already shook it up or already pre-opened it, maybe to give it the pressure to help it to go out. So it didn't have the grip strength to actually break the seal, but it had enough strength because it was pre-loosened to be able to do that. But still, it does show off something. And that's why I want everyone to, when they look at videos, always ask, what am I not seeing? And what are they implying? and you know,
what is if they show you 10 demos and the other company shows you 10, look at the correlation. Like, what are the ones that company A doesn't have and company B has, and the ones company B doesn't? Those are the things they don't know how to do yet.
And it's also like, it's always the first and last mile problem, right? They're showing you everything in between. They're not showing you, as like when you have someone that is actually opening up the bottle, if they're holding it in their hand and they got it like this, or they have a bottle opener already in the hand, it's like, well, you didn't see it actually pick up the bottle.
Exactly.
Someone put it in his hand and positioned it, and now you're just seeing, whoa, look at that. It's kind of coming off. And they give you the impression, and that's because we're used.
The whole scissors thing was like that too. It just magically had scissors, and it magically had the lighter in its hand. You know, it didn't show it.
Well, in this case, they didn't have an arm, so they had no choice. So it can't actually grab anything. So they're showing the dexterity. That's fair. But I'm talking about some of these other videos I'm seeing where they're telling a story. And the thing about storytelling, you don't have to tell the whole story. You can imply a lot of things, or we fill in the gaps because it would be boring to talk about that part. So we're telling a story about the robot bringing the groceries in. Okay. Now we can either show the robot getting the groceries out of the car and bringing up the steps and opening the door and coming and closing, or we can just sort of see it's coming through the door and the door's closing. It's like, oh, look at it. It picked up the groceries. Like, no, it never did that. Someone actually handed it to it, and all you're seeing is that. So again, look at a lot of the videos and find out what are they not showing, because the first and last mile is the hardest problem. Always the hardest problem. And think of it from that context of what's going on in the video. Did they show me the first mile? Did they show me the last mile? If they didn't, it can't do it. Yeah.
That is true. All right. Wow. So much cool stuff to talk about or to look at today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Folks, definitely let Scott know what you think in the I don't know, positive things.
Yes.
let him know what you think. But I have a feeling there will be a lot of engineers watching this going like, oh man, either he's guessing what we're doing or crap, we need to do that too. So there's probably those two reactions from people who are in this business right now. So anyway, I really appreciate you spending an hour with us to talk about all this. It's really wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we will see all of you in the next video. Bye.